Last time on CarCraft Video, we put a Gen 3 Hemi into a 1972 Dodge Challenger. This time we are putting a 6-liter Chevy V8 into this 2007 E90 BMW. You can pick up one of these cars for under $5,000, and that's a great deal for a front-engine rear-wheel drive chassis that has become a staple at time attack and drift events. The factory straight 6 has over 250,000 miles on it, and like all BMWs that pack on some miles, it's plagued with oil leaks and drivability issues. This 328 Wagon is a great candidate for an LS swap. The term E90 with a BMW is basically the body code. The E90 was produced from 2004 to 2013 and is actually made up of multiple models. The E90 is a sedan, the E92 is a coupe, the E93 is a convertible, and lastly the Wagon or the touring version was coded E91. This time in the shop we're working with Brian Shand, who you may have seen on TV with Kevin before. What you may not know about Brian is that he's factory trained BMW technician, master ASC certification, and I can't think of a better person out there to bring in to help out with this build than Ryan Shand.
I've had a handful of BMWs. I've got a bit of a problem. I've got, I think, 3 M3s right now, so I'm a bit of a M3 fan. What drew me to BMWs was essentially the front engine rear drive setup. I don't really like front wheel drive cars, so my preference was always towards rear drive setups. So when it came time to go into an aftermarket type program outside of the regular tech schools, I just went with the BMWs just for the simple reason of they didn't produce any front wheel drive vehicles.
Okay, so we got the hood off this BMW, and we're working on this because these are popular for engine swaps.
Yeah, it's a great platform to work from. It's front engine, rear drive. It's the hot rodder's dream. This is the N52 engine. It's naturally aspirated, straight 6, 3-liter, good fuel economy, decent power, but I think we can do a little bit better than that.
Before you nail us in the comments about another LS swap, and believe me, I'm sick of LS swaps myself, but you can't argue with the fact that they are very affordable, they make a ton of power for what you get out of it, dollar per horsepower, you can't beat them, and it's we're doing something different here. At least for us, we're doing something different into this BMW. So it combines an affordable car, very affordable car these days, with the most power / fun per dollar you can buy and put into an older car.
Basically pull the whole front end of the car off. We got to get rid of the radiator, the bumper support, the front bumper cover, the headlights, get all that out of the way to make room to pull the engine and trans as a combo. We've got the engine pretty close ready to pull out. We've got to make a few electrical disconnections. I'm doing that here in the E-box. Most of this is going to go away, but there is some parts we need.
A lot of people right now can't afford something like a Chevelle or a Mustang, and a lot of people are buying cars like this and putting V8 engines in them, American V8 engines in them.
Yeah, I think the E90 chassis is a really good chassis to start with, and I also like the smaller 3 Series style BMWs. Have good focus on handling, performance. It's just in the horsepower department there's limitations. You can make power with BMW V8s and 6 cylinders. It just costs a lot more, and there's a bit of a ceiling with those. So to combine the two, domestic V8 powertrain and a European chassis, nice BMW 3 Series chassis, it's a winner.
CarCraft is all about making the most of what you have, and we were actually kind of on the LS swap thing pretty early on. Jeff Smith was our tech editor, and he really got into these engines in a big way. He did a whole series on interchangeability and figuring out which headers and oil pans worked with which motor mounts and how to put them in Chevelles and Camaros primarily. I remember one of his first LS builds that he did in his shop and at home, he said he was never going to work on another small block Chevy again. He liked these things so much. The O-rings around the intake ports, they don't leak oil like a small block does. They have the full piece oil pan gaskets and stuff like that. It's just a better sealing engine. He liked that a lot and said he was never going to work on another small block Chevy. I think he's broken that promise since then, but it's hard to escape LS swaps these days. Just about everywhere you go, any car show you go to, you'll see an LS swapped into something.
Now, we're not the first people to try to put a Chevy V8 into a BMW. There's a lot of information and resources online. You just got to do a little digging. Now, despite all the connections and plugs we had to disconnect to get the engine out of here, there's really, everything's kind of condensed into this E-box area. Most of the connections are just dealing with the drive-by-wire throttle. Now, typically, the Holley system uses the GM throttle pedal or integrates with the standard GM throttle pedal. The beauty of this is we'll be able to retain our BMW throttle pedal and just tie it into this system. Now, to integrate our BMW and our Chevy engine together, we're using this Holley to BMW CAN bus adapter. It'll allow the CAN bus for the BMW side of things to talk to the Holley Terminator.
This CAN bus adapter will take the information from the Holley Terminator Max and use it to keep our BMW instrument cluster functioning. Plus, we can utilize the outputs on the Terminator Max to run our electric fan as well as activate our AC compressor clutch. The engine we're putting in our BMW came from eBay Motors, and this thing was pretty cheap, $2,600 for the engine and transmission, free shipping too. You can tell it's out of a van because it's got a mile-long dipstick tube here. It's a 6-liter, 2011, so it's an L96 engine, but all we really want out of this thing is the short block, so I'm about to take all this van stuff off, get it ready to drop into our BMW. Using an engine from the junkyard is always an adventure. Unless you've seen it running, it's difficult to tell what condition it's in. Though you may be tempted just to drop it in place, the smarter move is to give it a thorough inspection first. That means you'll need to spend a little more money on new gaskets, but that's just good insurance. Though our engine looked like a mess on the outside, the inside looked good. There's no sludge or signs of coolant contamination. The cylinders look good with the cross-hatching still visible, and with no ridge at the top of the bore. One item we noticed during teardown was some damage to our cylinder heads. We actually saw this in the online listing and planned for this with a new set of factory rebuilt cathedral port heads just for this build.
All right, now while John makes some progress on the engine, now's a great time to tackle this front suspension. Now this Wagon showed up to the shop already sitting on some aftermarket coilovers, but we're going to swap these out for some air ride at all 4 corners for improved ride and more adjustability. We're also going to take the opportunity to swap out some of these higher mileage control arms with some fresh parts. In doing that, we're going to not go with stock parts, we're going to upgrade to M-specific control arms. Now, M for BMW just stands for their motorsports division. It takes the regular cars, improves braking, handling performance, and of course power. Make it more fun to drive. Now, the difference between these control arms and the M parts are basically upgrading from soft rubber bushings to stiffer rubber bushings or replacing the rubber bushings with a ball joint. Now, I've already got the driver's side torn down, so let's get started on this side, start swapping some parts. All right, with our M-Series knuckle and control arms in place, I want to show you guys the air suspension system we're going to be using. Now, we wanted to go with a system like this so we can have some adjustability and ride quality, and most importantly, the ability to put this thing on the ground when we want to. Now, up front, it's an air strut with an adjustable shock. We've got ride height sensors. The rear shock is also adjustable as well. Rear air spring and a control arm for clearance around the airbag. We've got all the wiring, handheld controller, and the module we need to get it up and running. And since it's an air system, well, we obviously need a compressor and storage tank. And once we get the engine installed, we'll find a home for this thing.
We upgraded the front brakes of our BMW to the M3 specs, which are a bigger rotor and caliper package from the factory. In the back, we're sticking with the stock stuff, but we're upgrading those components with new rotors and pads from Hawk Performance. These are their drilled and slotted rotors that help keep the pads clean. There are a lot of brake pad options to go with. We chose the Performance ceramic brake pads.
We've made some good progress on our BMW so far. We pulled the stock engine and suspension out and got our new airbag suspension in place. Next up, we'll finish our engine and get this E90 ready to run and drive again.